Welcome to the Andrew Holland Podcast, where we explore the stories of successful people, get insight and advice from individuals who have accomplished amazing things, and dive deep into understanding ourselves as human beings. Now, here's your host, Andrew Holland.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Andrew Holland Podcast. Joining me in studio today is Jorge Trueba of Valley 48 Carpentry, a rough carpentry business here in the Phoenix Valley. Jorge, thank you so much for joining us today.
Andrew, thank you so much for the invitation.
So your story is incredible. You're an immigrant. Your parents are immigrants. And we have so much from an entrepreneurial perspective to cover in a short amount of time. So take us back. Tell us your parents' story, your story. You grew up here in the Phoenix metro area.
Correct.
You were working for a very, very large organization as a project superintendent. And someone within that organization, Carrie, who we've had on this podcast, helped you see the potential in yourself to go out on your own and start Valley 48 Carpentry. So we'll get into all that. But take us back. Give us a glimpse into your childhood.
Yeah, so my father came to this country in 1968. He's from Spain, northern Spain, from country boy from the mountains of northern Spain, basically. And through poverty, my father was in the Spanish Civil War, so it was like you're tending to your own land, you're getting the food of the day from Franco, and it was really hard time. So he decided that it was time for him to chase the American dream. So in 1968, he came to this country and he went straight into sheep herding. He got off the plane, went down to the farm down in Chandler, and then they took him straight out into the mountains to sheep. And he tended over 10,000 heads of sheep when he first came to this country.
Wait. Okay, so your dad is in Spain. He's relying on Franco, who was the dictator at the time in Spain. He's basically relying on the dictator to provide him food. And had he met your mom at that point yet?
No, not yet.
Okay. And he said, this is not the life I want for myself or for my future family. And he just decided to up and leave and come to the United States.
Correct. So a lot of other people that live in that area, in the same town, in the surrounding towns, which for the longest time in history, a lot of people from Spain would come here to do this type of work. So my dad he got a letter in the mail. It's Manolo. Would you like to come to the United States and follow your dream? And he did. And he was 24 years old when he did it. So by the time he was here for about 4 or 5 years is when he met my mother. She came down from Mexico, from Sonora. And she came kind of like as a nanny / student. And they met here, and within the year they were married and had me in 1975.
So did he tend sheep in Spain?
In Spain, he tended to all types of different animals that the family owned, mainly being cows and pigs.
Okay,
is what he did back home.
And when he came here, I mean, obviously a new country, he wants to achieve the American dream. Was he working for someone as a sheep herder to start out?
Correct, and I think I have it written down here somewhere. I want to say it was the Gunnarsson family here in Chandler, and he basically would take the sheep up, bring them down, and when he brought them down, then he would go into milking cows.
Okay.
But unfortunately, he had an industrial accident on the farm, and he got kicked by a cow and destroyed his back. And that's what turned my father into an entrepreneur. And that's where I learned a lot of my entrepreneurship from. The business side it all comes from him. At a young age, I mean, I'm 3 years old and I'm putting my dad's socks on for him because he can't bend over. But at the same time, we're on the corner of country club and university, and my dad is taking 2 sticks and he's doing yarn and he's creating pictures by hand. And we're sitting out there and we're trying to sell this stuff and try to make a living. It didn't work out. You know, we ended up having to move to Mexico because he opened up a business in Mexico with another family member that happened to be on my mother's side. So, I did 2 years in school in Mexico when I was like 7, 8 years old. And that's what really rounded out my Spanish, because Spanish is my first language. Don't get me wrong. I had to learn how to speak English. And the story on that side is pretty interesting too. I learned how to speak because of PBS and Sesame Street is how I learned how to speak.
Really?
English. Believe it or not, back then they had the same program in English and Spanish. So my parents would plop me in front of the TV, and I'd look at it in English, and I'd go, what the heck is going on? And then it was on Spanish, and my mind just went click, 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 and connected everything to where the point where my parents are ready to put me in school, they said, you know what, let's bring a tutor in because we're not sure if this kid speaks any English yet. The tutor comes in, sits down with me because she comes back into the kitchen 15 minutes later and she goes, your son speaks perfect English. They're like, what? And she sat there and had a conversation with me. And I was already fluent in English and Spanish by the time I was 4 years old.
And most people wouldn't even have a clue that you spoke. That Spanish was your first language. You have basically zero accent.
Zero accent. I surprise people daily. I tell my story every day because people are just blown away that I speak fluent, perfect Spanish. And I mean, my Spanish, I can get down to where I'm talking slang. So like when I talk to my field guys and stuff like that some do speak Spanish, I'm able to speak their slang, their street Spanish. And I'm also able to go in to a corporate company and speak perfect Spanish.
You're very blessed to be multilingual at a young age because as Spanish, having taken 8 years in high school and then in college, was going to be one of my majors, but I was a class short and ended up being a minor and studying abroad. It is so much harder when you're older. Yeah. What business did your dad go into in Mexico with basically your in-laws, was it?
Yeah. So basically my mother's sister, my aunt,
okay.
Her husband was going into the heavy machinery business. Mm-hmm. And also we were opening up like a grocery store. So my father took the grocery store part of the business to be able to create cash flow to fund the heavy machinery. And the cash flow was there, but the heavy machinery, I understand it now, it takes a while to start a construction business.
It's a capital intensive industry. So you got to build that cash before you can really start it.
Exactly. And my father did the grocery side of it, and he just didn't see the returns just yet. If he would have just stuck it out just a little bit more, I'd probably still be living there and my story would be different today. But he decided to pack up and we came back to the American dream. And when we did that,
what year is this, plus or minus?
This is about 1985.
Okay.
We came back. He didn't know what he was going to do. He brought a little bit of jewelry back with him. But it was difficult for him to sell jewelry. So at that time, him and myself and my mom, we started going out to... Oh, I'm sorry. Let me back up. I forgot all about this. I'm glad I had this conversation with my dad before I came here. Before people started buying storage units and it became very popular, storage wars, my dad started doing that back in 1985. His first storage unit was $70 and he ended up making about $1,000 off it because he found diamonds in the storage unit.
Are you kidding me?
Not kidding. But then after that, it started becoming popular, and within a couple of years, he couldn't do it anymore because people were just like, I'll give you more, I'll give you more. And what used to cost $70 or $100 for a unit now costs $500 to $600. And once you spend that money on that one unit and you end up losing, game over.
Yeah.
So we started going to garage sales, and we'd go around and just buy basic necessities that people need, like blenders and coffee makers, plates, coffee mugs. Sometimes we'd buy a living room set or a bedroom set, and we'd go out and we'd clean it all up, and we'd have another yard sale, another garage sale, and we would resell it. Then on Sundays, we would go down to swap meet. My dad and I, we would load up his little truck and his little trailer, and we'd load all this stuff up.
Wait, where would you go?
Swap meet.
Where's that?
27th Avenue in Buckeye. It was back in the day. It had a big, huge water tower. I don't think it's there anymore.
And what is that?
So swap meet is basically like a place where you can go, and it's a huge parking lot, right? And you can rent a little spot to where you put all your stuff down, and people just walk around and look for, all this stuff that people didn't want and they're looking to sell. But it became like a weekly business for us, where we were there every single Sunday reselling everything that we bought at a yard sale, including me. I mean, I was buying baseball mitts and footballs, and I was buying Nintendo games and stuff like that. And I was buying it real cheap, and I was slapping a sticker on it, and I was making money. I mean, I was a kid in junior high, and I had pocket money on me all the time. So that's what we went into. But my dad decided that jewelry that we bought in Mexico, that, you know what, I'm going to take it to swap meet. I'm going to put it out there and just see what happens. And that's what happened. Somebody was like, hey, how much is the jewelry? Oh, that costs, $1,000. Oh, here you go. I'll buy it. So it made sense to stop working so hard on the swap meet stuff, shut that down, and let's start selling jewelry. At that time, I was already in high school. I'm already starting, to build up my career. My dad's just taking off on the jewelry, and he did really well. He's retired now, but he did phenomenal. He figured out a way to get out of depression from a bad back, which that happened when my mom was 5 months pregnant when he hurt his back. So she also had to become, what she already was. My mom is the oldest out of 10 children in Mexico.
Wow.
So she was not only a sister, she was also a mother to her sisters. So
anybody that makes excuses for not being successful in this country needs to listen to Jorge's story. It won't happen overnight. It won't be easy. You might have to pivot. You might have to make tough decisions. I mean, from Spain to the United States to Mexico. What city in Mexico?
I was in Guadalajara, Jalisco.
Guadalajara. That's where I studied abroad with the host parents.
Beautiful place.
Estado de Jalisco, right?
Yes.
And back to Arizona, back to the United States. I mean, it's not easy and it's not for everybody, but with grit and perseverance, your dad discovered jewelry and was very, very successful. Now, what I often find in basically all of my guests that are entrepreneurs is that they have that entrepreneurial spark, someone in their childhood enlightened them into what this can be. And you grow up with that idea of it's very different than working 9 to 5. And there's nothing wrong with that. We need a whole economy of people that like to work for other people and people that are also entrepreneurs. But you saw that. You saw how much work it took. You were involved buying your baseball gloves and your mitts, getting pocket change. Transition now and take us to how you got where you are today, how you got into construction, working for a much larger organization, and then that development as an individual in your talent, deciding to take that big leap and start your own company, Valley 48.
Sure. So I would have to back up even a little bit further because I didn't quite start in construction right away.
Okay.
I had the warehouse job, that's what my mom did. And that's what my uncles did when they came to this country. They got jobs at a company driving a forklift or working on an assembly line. So I thought, I guess that's what my life has entailed for me. But then I realized that, I got married young early and I realized that I have a child on the way and, working in a manufacturing plant isn't probably the best idea. And I was like, well, what do you do that you're so good at? And like, well, you sell stuff. So I went out looking for work and I ended up getting a job at a construction supply, like selling hardware, nails and stuff like that. And I really wanted to sell, but it was like, there was no sales position. So I had to show my worth and, they didn't know that I spoke good Spanish yet. And so I started in the warehouse and I just kept my head down and I worked my way up to the order desk and I started selling. And that's where I started meeting a lot of owners of their own framing companies. And all of a sudden, everybody's sending their guys to me because I speak Spanish. So I start getting these great relationships with these business owners. So the day that they found out that company had to let some people go when I was on that list, I was headhunted. Everybody called me. I had my choice to go wherever I wanted to go. But I decided.
How old are you at this time? Plus or minus?
I want to say, this is when I started working for John Pisani. I'm 24 years old.
Okay. And you had your first child at
20.
20. Okay.
20. Okay. So 4 years later, I think we have Michaelis on the way. We are our daughter. But I decided to join Pisani Construction, which he's already retired. He's already passed away. But this is a man that gave me $1 million education. I think about this man every day. I ask him questions, in the back of my head. Is just somebody that really rounded out my entrepreneurship business owner wise. Cause I saw both sides of being an authoritarian type of owner, but a great salesman when it came to talking to the customer and to the client. So I knew what I was getting into, and I had to have thick skin. So it was very blue collar, put your head down, get yelled at, don't do it again. So I learned through him, and I basically went out into the field and I became a laborer. But I was also, hey, go over there to the office and talk to the superintendent. And I need you to tell him this, but I want you to tell him these exact same words. And those words weren't the very cleanest words, but, and I'm not that kind of person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't talk that way, but he taught me to not be afraid and say what's on your mind. And that was probably the best thing I could have learned in that aspect of my life, because I was just like, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, sir, no, sir. So by him teaching me, being a little bit stronger can get you in a little bit further. I'm really grateful for that. But it was just that labor, going and talk to these guys. I didn't know. He was training me to be a superintendent. He was training me to be more of a manager than I ever was. And he saw it in me. And he gave me that opportunity. So next thing you know, within a year of me going out a laborer and then turning into an apprentice, and then I just kind of like had a year acceleration of carpentry. And then after that, he just plucked me right out of there and he goes, you're in charge of all these crews. I know you can do it because I just trained you to do it. And he just sent me off onto the sunset. And I worked for him for about 16 years. I had 7 crews at my highest point. I had about 110 carpenters that were all under me. And that's what rounded me out. And that's what gave me a position and a chance and an availability to go join LG Design Build. And that's where I met Carrie. She gave me the opportunity that I don't think anybody else would have. She kind of saw in me what John Pisani saw. Not a lot of people saw that, you know, and the people that do and have seen it, I've been very grateful for it. But yeah, LGE was
so you're about 40 at this point.
Yeah, so at LGE I was there for about 5 years, so I'm like 43, 42, 43.
Okay.
Around
Okay.
there. So it was I want to say I was on a path of slow growth learning.
Mm-hmm.
With John Pisani, I got stuck and became a rock star. But I've always been a superstar. I can't be stuck, you know, there. But it took me those 16 years to finally feel like, you know what, you really got it. Like you can leave this now and you can do whatever you want. It took me 16 years to feel that way. And once I did it, I realized, well, you could have done that a lot sooner. It just took a while to figure it out, you know.
What changed in you over those 16 years? And the point you just made needs to be yelled from the mountaintops from an entrepreneurial perspective, because everybody thinks, especially in this day of technology, and you can start a tech company and you can be millionaire 2 or 3 years, and you know, you can be an influencer at these young ages. The reality is sometimes to ultimately do what you love, it takes an extensive training period under someone else's wing, working for someone else, to not only learn a particular craft in a particular industry, but also to mature as an individual to the point where you're ready to be an entrepreneur. Describe that maturation process that you experienced with John through those 16 years.
I would say that transition came when I started asking questions back. Like, it was always put your head down, listen to this man, and he's got the answer for you. But things got either so repetitive, or we've already done something like this to where I think we should do. The one moment when he would tell me that he wanted something this way, and then I would rebuttal and be like, you know what, I like the way you're thinking, but have you thought about this? And that one moment that I did say that, and he just like, you know what, you finally did it, is the words that he said. It's almost like he was waiting for me. And
John said that to you.
It's almost like he knew it, and he was just like waiting for the moment that I did it in order for him to tell me, I'm proud of you. You know what I mean? And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because really, to have somebody to baby you all the time, like, no, hey, you should be doing, for you to actually do it on your own and then be praised for it, it was a pretty good feeling.
I can imagine. Yeah. And coming from John, who took you under his wing, but also it's a huge credit to you wanting to learn and wanting to change, because And what was so important, and this is for you, Marcus, because I know you're watching, it was not the what, it was the why. Simon Sinek had a huge conversation with Marcus and his girlfriend, Carrie, about this the other night at dinner. But that's so important. You asked why. And I think that's a good reminder for all of us as entrepreneurs who have people working for us to not only look out for people like you who have that it factor, but also explain to people why. Because often if they know the why behind something, they can start to respectfully poke holes into things that maybe need to be different. And that's exactly what you did.
Yep.
And that's what John wanted.
Yeah.
And
he was quite the teacher. It was a lot of things, do this and do that, and me in my head just going, what are you asking me to do? Are you crazy? But the funny thing is that after I went through it and I did exactly what he wanted me to do, and then I saw what the result was, I was like, holy crap. Like it was just a full circle. He told me to do something. I did it. I saw what the outcome was. And then I just learned something without him actually having to teach me. I lived it. I didn't have to learn it.
John basically said, you're ready to do it. You're ready to do what you want. And did you go out searching for LGE Design Build, or did LGE Design Build come to you? Tell us about that.
So on the LGE side of it, I made the change, and I basically went around and I chose about 3 general contractors that I wanted to work with, because I've been working here in towns. What was it? Since the 2000s, I think it is, as a superintendent for framing. So I know every single GC in town, and I don't just know the superintendent. I know some PMs, I know some owners. So I really did my due diligence to find who I wanted to work with. And I narrowed that to the 3 that I wanted. And when I narrowed it down to the 3, then I said, all right, narrow it down to who you really want. And I narrowed it down to LGE. I did some work for the general superintendent there for a bit. That's how I got in. Vance Chapman is his name. I did a couple jobs with him and I knocked him out of the water, and I thought he was just a regular superintendent. I had no idea. I finished like the second one and I says, hey Vance, what's the next one? Let's knock another one out together. I really like working with you. I want to do the next one with you. And he's like, George, I'm not a superintendent. I'm like, what do you mean? We just did 2 jobs together. He goes, well, I am a superintendent, but I'm the general superintendent. I run all the superintendents. So I made a great friend there. And I called him up because we got along so great, and says, Vance, I've left Pisani Construction. I'd like to work for LGE. I want you to know that LGE is the only person I'm going to reach out to. And if you give me a chance, I'm all yours. If you don't, then I'm going to move on to option B. I just want to let you know LGE is option A. So he got me an interview with Frank Pettit and Carrie Masters. And that's where I met Carrie.
So for those of you who aren't in construction, obviously on some of these huge scale projects, you have a lot of the people that are doing the work. You've got subcontractors on there, and then you have a superintendent that often has probably 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 jobs under their belt, where they go through and just make sure that subcontractors are showing up when they need to. If you have your own employees, that they're doing what they need to, and you kind of manage the entirety of the project from beginning to end. So you were a project superintendent, and Vance was a general superintendent over 30 superintendents?
A big amount of superintendents.
So it just like in any organization, to make these large developments successful, you obviously have to have a certain level of hierarchy. So you didn't even know you were working with Vance at the general superintendent. He was like the big dog of all of the superintendents.
Correct.
You developed a friendship. You go to LGE. What did you learn at LGE that prepared you to eventually go out and be an entrepreneur?
I go back to that feeling of being a rock star again. When I got hired with Carrie, one of the things that I told her was, I have 20 years left of work inside of me. And I go, and I really enjoy working with LGE. And I think the next 20 years of my life are going to be here at LGE. I didn't realize at a later time that I put myself in a rock star situation, It took me about 4 years, 3.5 years later, and said, you just put yourself right back in the situation you were before. You've already done this for 4 years. You feel like you've already, if you haven't mastered it, at least you can do it to where you feel really comfortable. That first year was like, okay, what am I doing? I'm kind of like learning. By year 2, I'm feeling comfortable. They're throwing more work at me. I got to a point where they threw just a little bit to work at me. So I just kind of, whoa, we got to slow down a little bit. And I'm glad I said it, or else it kind of would have ruined my career at that point. I would have been like, you know what, I just got way too much work. So they were able to help with me. And I'm very grateful that they listened and said, hey, before you sink, when we put you on 4 projects, we're going to help you out. But the reality was that about year 3.5, I go, you're a rock star again. You know, they're telling you.
And you wanted to be a superstar.
And I was crawling out of my skin, and I was like, I should be doing this on my own. Why am I not doing this on my own? You have all this experience on the carpentry side. You can do this. You can do it. And I didn't do it on my own. I kind of got pushed into it. I had an ex-superintendent of mine reached out to me and said, George, we got our license. We would like to go ahead and see if we can start something. So I was like, hey, let me jump in there. Like, I can get you contracts and stuff like. So I kind of had something going on at the time. I had gone to LG about a self-perform company, and it was like, kind of yes and no. And then all of a sudden they wanted one too. So I was kind of like, whoa, you know. So I had to make a decision. So I left LGE to go help Integrity Structures. I didn't have full control of that company, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I had to leave them too. A lot of the things that I felt that needed to be done weren't being done, and I felt like it was kind of like destroying everything that I accomplished. For other business partners that kind of were field guys, they weren't really on the corporate side of things. So I had to leave. And then that's when I finally decided, you know what, no more, help for these guys. It's time to help myself. But I couldn't do it by myself. I have a great partner. He used to work for Verizon. He opened up 40 plus stores for Verizon. So I have a great guy that helps me in the office. I handle the field, and we're great.
What's his name?
His name is James Morehouse.
James Morehouse.
Yeah, and we're great because he's more of a, bullet point kind of guy. Like, give it to me quick. I'm in an office. I'm in a hurry. And I'm an over communicator. So we kind of come together and we balance each other out really well.
How long ago was it when you started Valley 48 Carpentry?
I started Valley 48 Carpentry last year, March. So I got 1 year under my belt. Yeah.
So tell me, first off, something you said that resonates for many of you as listeners, I'm sure. If you are in the corporate world and you feel stuck in this rock star skeleton, if you will, and you can be a superstar, that is your first sign you've got to make a move. Because every entrepreneur, and we've talked a lot ad nauseum on this podcast, are entrepreneurs born or are they made? I believe it's genetic. Obviously, nurturing and upbringing has some impact, but I believe if you have that ambition, it's in you from birth, you will feel that if you do not satisfy that superstar requirement, that ambition, that hunger, that drive that comes with being an entrepreneur. So let that be your first clue. If you're worried about becoming an entrepreneur, or you want to, but you're not sure whether, if you have the feeling that Jorge just described, that's when you know it's the right feeling. What is something that you wish you would have known, or someone would have set your expectations properly, that you now know after being 1 year in business, that you didn't know in advance, that has maybe taken you by surprise?
I really hold a high standard to what I do and what my employees do, to a point where I praise that kind of work. Accountability, it's a huge one. Great customer service and stuff like that. And when I came into this, and now I'm working with like vendors, and I'm working with general contractors and PMs and stuff like that, I wish I would have known how difficult it is to get like responses and good service. And it almost, I was just talking about this just yesterday with my business partner. I just picked up a couple more contracts just like last week, and I put it on LinkedIn, and all of a sudden, like, all these people that I've reached out to and that I've talked about and that know me and know what I'm capable of, I've had like maybe 4 or 5 people, I can count them in one hand, that believed in me and that have helped me through this whole process from the beginning to where I was with LGE and Integrity Structures to my whole history of making my way into Valley 48. They've stuck with me, and they're about to be rewarded. It's the people that didn't quite believe in me, that didn't give me the customer service that I really needed, that, hey, I'm going to get this to you this afternoon. A week later, I haven't gotten anything. It's just been a crazy amount of grief. If I would have known that a little bit better, I probably would have approached things a little bit different. I just throw things on people's laps and I expect them to think the way I do. So I've learned to retrain myself to make those people better. And I feel like if I don't retrain myself to make those people better, they're not going to get better.
Every entrepreneur has to learn what you just described. Because even when you're working for someone else, it is so different when it is your company.
Yep.
And now you have people working with you, your colleagues, and your level of expectation is not in the standard of quality that you set, whether it's in the work product, whether it's in the communication, the timing of communication, the customer service that's delivered is often very different. And understandably so. When it's your name on the line and when it's your company, it's natural to have that higher bar. But it's important for every successful organization to instill that higher bar throughout the culture. And not necessarily in an authoritarian or dictatorial way, but in a manner that shows through your mission statement, your values, this is important and this is how we are successful. I think the other thing that what you're describing, and if you haven't listened to last week's episode with Jonathan Kaiser of Kaiser Commercial Real Estate, he's the author of the book, You Don't Have to Be Ruthless to Win. His whole mantra is success through service. And what you just described was you focused on service. And these 5 people that stuck with you, they are helping you because they wanted to help you. They don't expect to be rewarded. That's not why they did it. Yet, they're going to be largely rewarded, as you just described. Right. And I had such a good conversation with Jonathan on that last week, and that's what he talks about. But you just described it in your entrepreneurial experience in the first year of business and all the years of experience you have in construction, not even knowing it or not even thinking in that. And, my question for you is, why do you think that is such a outlier versus the norm for people to think that way and treat people that way? And share the story before the podcast. You and I were talking with my brother about your experience on a job site. Share that story with us and kind of lead into the answer that question in that context.
That was a story about the dig ditcher.
Yes.
Yeah. When I first started as a superintendent, went out to a job site, met with another superintendent, just kind of learned a little bit, and I'm the kind of guy that likes to, hello, good morning, how are you? And
treat humans like humans.
So, that particular morning, it was a dig ditcher. Buenos dias, ¿cómo estás? And just a quick little conversation. And of course, as soon as they hear my Spanish, it's like, who are you? Where are you from? So I give them a little quick 2-minute synopsis on who I am and where I'm from and all that. And then immediately we're best friends already. That guy will throw himself in front of the mud in order for me to walk over the pond. You know what I mean? But when I finished having that conversation, it was very interesting. I went back to the superintendent that was kind of like waiting for me. He was just kind of like, looking at his watch. And I finally get to him and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, just talking to that guy, saying hello. You don't have time to talk to those people. We have bigger things and better things to do. And I was floored,
What a
I was
disgrace.
Like, yeah. And I was like, and the way I look at it is, today he's digging his ditch and tomorrow he owns his own ditching company. And he's always going to remember me because of that little conversation. Because I took the time as an authoritative figure on the job site. I took the time to talk to that guy.
Just to treat him like a human. I don't understand why these people who move up the chain, and this is, don't even get me started on corporate culture. They think because they happen to be on some hierarchy, they somehow pull their pants up in a better way or use the restroom in a better way or have some air of superiority over anybody else on this earth. And they lose again. Like this is such a simple concept. It doesn't matter where you're from or who you are. We are all humans. We are all God's children, created in his image. Treat each other like humans. I don't care if you're the president, if you're Mark Cuban, I don't care who you are, or if you're digging a ditch. Why?
It sounds so simple.
It is, but what,
and it is so simple.
So that's my question. It just baffles me. And it, not even, again, success through service, not even doing something because you're going to get something from it, but doing it because your motives are right, always wins in the long run. And that's all, let's say Wall Street or corporate America. I mean, being in business, you have to make money so that you can continue to help. And that's the most successful way to do it. But it's, especially in construction, it is the last thing that I would say that, and I want your experience, that superintendent's response is the majority.
Well, yeah.
Versus the minority.
The majority, and I'll tell you why. These superintendents have grown up blue collar all their life. So, they don't have a need to treat anybody any different than the way they've been treated. When you work in construction and you're a laborer and then you become an apprentice, you go through the worst. I mean, it's a doggy dog world. You don't get treated very nice. You're the runt. You got to go get whatever it is that they need. You do all the hard work. But that's what construction has always been. You put your head down, you let the old timers beat you up, but you're learning as you're going. And that's what's changed here a little bit recently, is that we're having the younger generation come in, and the younger generation isn't putting up with it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they're not, because really
that's
us older generation need to realize that we need to treat everybody with, care and concern. They're your employee, but in construction, I fear this every day. People don't understand that in construction, anybody can die on any day, any second, any minute. So, I mean, I got guys out in the field every day. It took me a while to learn how not to stress over that. But in the back of your mind, you're like, oh my, I hope nobody dies on my job site today.
So, always thinking about that in construction. And any, used to own a garbage company. Every day those guys went out in those big trucks. They are moving killers, or they can be, especially where we had the company with my business partner, Joe, in Wisconsin. When it was winter, it's terrifying. And you do have to find a way around it.
Yeah.
But there are some of these industries that people give the least amount of respect to, and they're actually the dangerous and just the best people work in them.
Putting their lives on the line for the company. It's crazy.
And for us as customers and society, like, these big buildings where you're way, I don't know, 500 feet up, don't build themselves. Like, you have humans. And obviously with technology, safety has gotten better. But what you said that baffles me is they knew they didn't want to be treated that way. But when they grow up, they treat other people that way. And that leads me into a story that I promised Carrie I would ask you about.
Okay.
Murray and LG's culture committee. I haven't heard this story, but Carrie told me I had to.
Okay.
So
Carrie, again, she saw my potential, and she called me up one day. I think I was probably like maybe a year in with LG, or just under, or just over, something like that. And she just calls me out of the blue, and she's like, Jorge, I want you, invite you to the values committee. And at that time, what I knew about the values committee is that not anybody made the values committee. Mm-hmm. There was a whole process. You had to be interviewed, and we're going to interview 5 people, and we're going to pick one, and we'll let you guys know. And I experienced that during the Christmas party. My first year there was like 3 or 4 people, a couple architects, and some other people trying to be part of the values committee. And one of the guys didn't get it, and he was just devastated. And I was like, wow, what is this values committee? To see this guy like, so I'm like, didn't get it. I really want it. Like, what is that? So I found out about it, and creating a great culture. And when I got that phone call from Carrie, I was like, Carrie, hey, thank you. I've only been here for a year. I feel like I need more time. Like you want to interview me? She's like, no interview. She's like, you are it. You are the spitting thing that we want the values committee. Everything that you do is everything that we expect a values committee member to do. So she brought me in. I said, well, if you put it that way, you know, I guess I'll join. But yeah, she brought me in, and it was great because I was part of onboarding. Every single employee that was hired there, that she hired, came through the values committee, and we taught them about LGE, and we were always open to take phone calls for any new employee. You know, I would come into the office and I would go to those new employees. How's your first week at work and stuff like that. But during COVID, we'll bring Murray right into it now. So during COVID, I was out in the field, and it got crazy out there, and like no people hanging around. I was working in downtown Gilbert, and I was just still bringing in my subs. But I got the chance. My business partner happened to have puppies, and they were all little golden doodles. So I bought one, and it was during COVID. But then when COVID opened up, I was like, Carrie, I got a dog, and I bring him to work with me every day. And she's like, oh, no, that's fine. I go, is he allowed to come into the office? She's like, is he well behaved? I'm like, yeah, he's pretty well behaved. I work with him every day. He comes to work with me. He goes up the stairs, down the stairs. He's right by my side. And she's like, yeah, bring him in. So I brought him in, and he was basically like a stress reliever for all the employees. We'd go in, and like the first couple weeks, we'd go in and say hi to everybody, and he'd go with me, and then we'd go up and down all the aisles, say hi to everybody. How's everybody doing? And then after a while, I'd just open up the door, and he'd go off on his own and say hi to people. Next thing you know, he's around the corner. People are rubbing his belly and stuff like that. So it really helped out. Even there was even people there that were afraid of dogs, and they came up to me afterwards like, hey, I just want to let you know, because of you and Murray, I'm no longer afraid of dogs. So yeah, it was pretty neat to have him, and they made him a values committee member. Like
Murray?
Yeah, there's a picture on Arizona Big Media where we won an award for the values committee, and I had Murray with me, but I had him in the truck. So I went up, and they're like, "Where's Murray?" I'm like, "He's in the truck." They're, bring him in, and we took a picture, all the value committee members and Murray. So yeah, it was pretty awesome.
That story says so much about culture.
It
and the
does.
importance of culture. And, obviously you were talking about a time when the construction industry didn't stop during COVID.
Correct.
Lots of industries did. But again, the garbage industry didn't stop. The construction industry didn't stop. And so during those scary times for a lot of people, having something like that, and the fact that Carrie and LG let you do that is a huge testament to the culture. And I want you to talk a little bit about, obviously in this 21st century, culture has become a hot button topic, or it's a lot more talked about now than it used to be. I think we still have a long way to go. And to your point, I think the younger generation, and this is good and bad, but on the good side, the younger generation is forcing this conversation to be had.
Yes.
Because their number one priority isn't about money.
Correct.
Which is very different than previous American generations, the baby boomers, World War I. It's always been, you shut your mouth, you put your head down, and you can move up and you can get more money. And the younger generations are saying, that's not as important to me.
They're not putting up with it.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So if there's plenty of work out there, it seemed like before it was like, there's no work out there. So take whatever you can and hold on to it and don't let it go. Now it's like, I'm going to go somewhere and I hope they treat me right. And if they don't, I'm going to quit and I'm going to go and find somebody else. Mm-hmm. There's more work out there. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to put up with this stuff. So yes, we us generation that didn't have to experience that and are seeing that transition, I'm making the effort to try to help those people get the chance that they want. I mean, I've always been like that. And that's what I've always thought. When I start my company, I'm not going to be John Pisani. I'm going to treat people and make them understand, even though he explained stuff to me and I figured it out afterwards, I still kind of want to like, hey, I'm going to ask you to do something that's going to make you very extremely uncomfortable, but the outcome is going to be extremely rewarding. And I think that generation needs to hear that.
Yeah. When
they hear that explanation, now they're more willing to do things for you and are willing to learn.
That's the thing. I think, back to, it's such a simple story, but it is an incredibly powerful story about that individual, the ditch digger. Mm-hmm. And he would have dug 3 more ditches for you, but for that other superintendent, he wouldn't have done anything. And it's
Yeah.
this idea of valuing each of us as individuals, no matter who we are, and as humans, I think cannot be stated enough. And that's something that scares me, what I see in society. And I'm curious with your perspective. It's being talked about more in the corporate world, but when I look at the impact social media has had on how people are treating other people,
Yeah.
and our attention spans, not, I think it goes with our attention spans and neurologically shorter tempers, if you will,
Yeah.
shorter, whatever you call that. Our strings are shorter. When I'm driving, or when some of the way I see people treat people at fast food, or it, even though we're talking about it more, it's getting worse. I always bring up this story, and my
Yeah.
brother and I talk about this. I talk with a lot of people, and this is another simple story, but I want you to test this. If you're in a major metropolitan area, or really anywhere, and you're driving, and let's say you're on an interstate and it's really busy and you want to get into the next lane. Let's say you're in a truck. If you're in a semi or you're in a truck, this is even more evident. Turn your blinker on. Normally, people would slow down and let you in. Now, and I've tested this, 95% of the time, the people will speed up. No, you're not getting in. And that seems like a silly story, but it is a testament to what I fear is a lack of do unto others as you would like done unto yourself. What's your perspective on that?
I completely agree, and don't get me started on driving in the valley. I have a friend and I that we talk every morning, and he's driving to work, and he's like, "Hey!" I just recently sent him a short reel of Bill Burr. He goes off on it, and I'll have to send it to you.
You'll have to send it to me.
But
yeah, it's a real thing.
It is.
And it seems silly, but that underscores, I fear, this misplaced rooted philosophy that is starting to become more selfish.
Entitled.
That's a good word. Entitled.
It's entitlement.
And it's not just one generation. It is permeating all of the generations.
Spreading like cancer.
It is.
It really is.
What do you think the fix to that is?
I don't think there is a fix. I think you really just have to find the right people. And unfortunately, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to hire the wrong person, and you're not going to know. I just was recently reading Radical Candor, and it was just that, like, hey, I like examples from their side.
That's a good business book. Or I haven't read Radical Candor.
It's pretty good business.
Okay.
It's about management and
Okay.
being candor with your people, or there's it kind of gives you a little bit of everything, authoritarian, and how to intermix and match all that stuff. And I mean, I just started reading it when I came back from vacation, and I applied it like the next day on the job site, and I was like, this is phenomenal. But it was just, I'm sorry, I lost my place.
What do you think the solution is, like, to this entitlement?
It was that I believe there isn't a solution. People are going to turn into what they're going to turn into, and I don't think you can turn them back into reverse.
You're a father. How can you say that? That's very scary to hear.
Yeah.
You can't possibly believe that?
Well, I do, because I kind of lived it with the values committee at LGE. There was a lot of cancer there when I first got there. There was a lot of talking back behind people and stuff like that.
Politics,
corporate
politics.
People that just stick their nose in where they don't need to and make stuff up that doesn't matter. Next thing you know, the whole company is in disarray. And that was one of the things that we did with Carrie. We really looked to see which people these were. And yeah, we went over there and we talked to them. I took one of the guys that was probably the most difficult guy, and I tried to put him under my wing, and it just did not matter what I told that guy. It did not. The nicer I got, the meaner he got.
Yeah,
it was like, I got this guy, and I can step all over him, and I can do whatever. And I had to tell Carrie, you know what? It's not going to work.
You just got to go.
You just got to, and then, you know what? And I learned this too with my crews. You start a crew, right? You weed out the guys that aren't making it, and you bring in, and you just keep recycling those guys until you find the right guy. And once you find that guy, Andrew, you treat him like he's a piece of gold.
Yeah.
And then you're going to turn him into you treat him like a piece of gold, because I'm going to turn you into a diamond.
Yeah.
You're going to become more than what you are today because you got hired by me.
And and it's sad that you have to recycle through people, but it is getting to the point
Yeah.
where, before, I don't know, 50 years ago, 90% of the people that applied were the right people on the bus.
Yeah.
Now it's almost reverse.
It's reverse.
20% of the people, and you have to go through people, and it's a concerning testament to society. I'm a big believer it starts in the home. It starts with the families, and I think we've broken down as a society, not only within the United States but globally. But I would say it's a real problem here. Is the family unit has really been torn asunder, and I think that is the only way for us to even put a dent in some of this entitlement mentality that we're having. Talk to me about people what advice would you give to someone who feels trapped, kind of like you described, in the corporate world, but they're terrified of going out on their own? What can they do to bust through that fear and not let it dictate and manage their life and prevent them from becoming the superstar they can become? And fear is a real thing.
Yeah, it sure was. I would say you need to hear it from somebody. I mean, sometimes you're like, man, I think I got this, but I'm not sure. And that unsurety might be what's holding you back. All you have to do is just reach out to someone that you trust, that that's going to tell you the truth. You know what I mean? But you have to be ready and receptive to take the negatives with the positives.
That's
right?
A great point.
You absolutely do, because that's going to help you grow. If somebody tells you something negative, don't take it like, okay, I can't do this. No, take that as, okay, that's something that I need to work on and become better at. But basically the reason why I am at today is because I got those boosts of confidence from some people. If it hadn't been for them, I wouldn't have made the jump. Once I made the jump and I realized how easy it was, I was like, why didn't I do this sooner? This whole thing about positive thinking and stuff like that, it really works.
It's incredible. Think and Grow Rich.
It works. I couldn't believe it.
Now, you said something. It was really easy.
Those are
not the word. No, because I think you meant it. That I think that's an interesting perspective, because I haven't heard many entrepreneurs who go out on their own say it was really easy. Well, so clarify or tell me more about that.
To me, I felt it was easy because it's something that I've already done in the past.
Okay.
So basically, running a field, I've already ran a field. Putting together takeoffs for lumber and hardware. It was stuff that I've already done. Like I've already been paid to do this. The difference is that I'm doing this and I don't have any pay yet. I hope I get a contract, so when I do this work, that I can pay myself for all the work that I did for free.
Exactly. That you eat what you kill mentality is a whole different mentality. And that's a big part of that fear that holds people back. But what you're saying is you were so well trained, you were doing 80% of what needs to be done. Let's talk about the 20% though, that you don't need to do when you aren't the entrepreneur or you aren't the owner.
Yeah. Well,
how do you prepare someone for that?
I would think that it is the 20% is learning how to be an owner. I've never been an owner, so that was the hard part. Like having to take a phone call from an owner of like 400 employees, and like you want to negotiate $1.8 million roof deck? Yeah, sure. Let's talk. I've never negotiated 1.8 million, but hey, I like to have that under my belt, and it was something that I did for Integrity Structures. I got us some contracts. But unfortunately, like I said, I had to leave. So now I had to start all over again. My first year, we only did like 170,000. It wasn't a lot. It wasn't nothing.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, to me, I felt like I could get more, but it's just that construction. I bid something and I give you a proposal, and it's funny. Like 2 weeks ago, I got 2 contracts. I haven't heard from these people for 6 months. I turned those in 6 months ago. And then all of a sudden it was like, here you go. And I was like, what?
That's that gives me hope because, my brother and I are rebuilding down here in Arizona. And it's funny because the construction industry, if you're thinking about going into it, what is, and anybody that's in it, the bane of our existence is estimating. Okay. Yeah. And I don't know what the exact number is, but I basically say you put 100 out, you're going to get 10. It's just the way, it's that 10%. So those 90 cost a lot of money to do, but you didn't win them. And there's lots of industries like that, but construction is obviously, since we're both in it, that's, the most prevalent one. Right. But don't give up hope is another thing.
Don't give up hope
that you've just described. 6 months.
6 months later.
You don't know why. And one of the things that's so important, and this is every industry, follow up. Yep. Just remind them that you're there. Yep. Remind them that you care.
Yep.
And
that's it.
You might not get it. Big deal. But the more and more you do that, word will spread. People will be like, you know what? This person's communicative. They follow up even when I don't ask them. They remind me even when I forgot, because everybody is so crazy busy. And in this, again, technological industry, nobody gets to turn it off. And so it's easy to lose sight of someone you haven't either done business with, or you've got 100 estimates coming in.
Yep.
Those that there's so many little things you can do that are really simple in this industry in particular, but quite frankly, in every industry, that sets you apart from the many.
Yep.
And that's how you grow a business.
You hit it right on the head. So as an LGE superintendent, I dealt with a lot of subcontractors. Nobody picks up the phone. You send a text, they don't respond. You send an email, they don't respond. Hey, you're falling behind. They don't care.
Drives me nuts.
So I learned all that stuff. And now that I'm the owner of my own company, I make sure that when I get an email that I write back, received, thank you for the opportunity. That's all it takes. I had a conversation with a PM today that it's our first job with them ever. Yeah, we're going to have some little issues up front, and the team needs to learn the rules of the regulations of the warehouse that's already open. And we made some mistakes, But the conversation we had with the project manager this morning was the difference is that I didn't hide behind the phone, that I picked up the phone, that I heard what the situation and the problem was. I fixed it. I was accountable for my employees and for my own company. And he says, George, you know what? I don't get that from everybody. And that's just put me ahead of everybody.
I'm going to go back. You said it was easy. It is easy. The number one thing that sets people apart, and Caleb and I have experienced this in HBC, and you look at our reviews and you look at the reason people choose us. It's one or two things, but they go along. Communication is key. We have, I pull this out every podcast. This has made it so easy. You know what? Yep. I won't have an answer for you till Friday. We've got a bunch of jobs, but I'll get back to you. Yep. Boom. Yep. Instead of just letting it sit there, or you know what? We did make a mistake. I'm sorry. We're going to rectify that next week.
Great point.
It's so easy just to communicate.
Yeah.
And no one does it. And that brings me to a point that Caleb and I talk about a lot. Why is our society conflict? Fewer and fewer people are able to deal with conflict and say, Jorge, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Let's work through this. Or me come to you and say, Jorge, I really appreciate the relationship we have. You did this on this job and I want to talk about it because we need to do better. And they don't hide. They don't. What the heck is going on?
There was a quote that I just saw recently. I can't remember the name of the movie. It was actually filmed here at ASU.
Oh, okay.
With Tom Cruise and Cuba Gooding Jr., the football team. I can't remember the name of it. Anyways.
Is it a newer movie?
No, it was older. It's
okay.
I'll try to remember. But
if any of you
show me the money.
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Anyways, they're arguing and they're yelling at each other. And Cuba Gooding tells him, he goes, the difference between what we're doing right now is that you think we're arguing, but we're actually communicating. It doesn't matter if we're yelling at each other or whatever, but we're starting to say the things that we didn't want to say. And then after we have this uncomfortable conversation, we're going to put our arms around each other and we're going to walk into the sunset and then we're going to go have a beer together. And people just they're afraid. People would rather send a text with no context on it. So it might have been a good text where the other person's like saying this in a very cheerful way. But what if my mood is reading that in a bad way. I would rather have a person to talk to so I can hear how they feel. It's all about looking people in the eyes, listening to their conversation. I mean, I almost feel like I've turned into a psychologist in my time, because you deal with different superintendents with different personalities, different subcontractors with different personalities. It's just crazy how different I have to think in order to be able to communicate with people that think differently than me.
It is so funny you say that, because that is the biggest thing that I hear from so many entrepreneurs
No kidding.
is, I didn't know I would have to be a psychologist. But in
That's
this
funny.
day and age, it is absolutely true. And the issue with that, and for me, and I've talked about this, but at 22 or 23, I was such a dumb young kid, didn't have a clue about the world. But I had all these people looking to me for answers. And I'm like, you have to put, not a confident front. I'm generally a confident person in general, but when you're young, you can be overconfident and arrogant.
Yeah.
But I haven't even figured myself out. I can't even psychoanalyze myself, let alone help these people. But that is a new business owner, entrepreneur requirement. If you're going to do it, is be ready to be a psychologist, because it is an absolute necessity for success in this day and age, given the decline in mental health that we're seeing across the board, across all the generations, but particularly the younger generations. And I think there's going to be a backlash because of the impact on mental health from technology. And we see it in the mental health, behavioral health is kind of what they're calling. And we see that that's becoming a whole new field or industry in the healthcare industry that's blossoming. The suicide rate is up. So it's interesting that you say that, but it's communication.
That's
Why is it so difficult, Jorge?
I don't know. If I had that answer, then everybody would be communicating with me very easily.
Yeah, the point is, and the one, again, I'll say this: anybody that's looking for an edge, back in the old days when everybody communicated, I say everybody, 98% of people provided amazing customer service. That edge was really hard to get. It was either
everybody did it back then.
Everybody did it. Now, so few are doing it that it's like, where's the gold pot? Like, I'm just going to treat people like humans, communicate the way that I would want to communicate or be treated, and own up to mistakes when I make them, or confront conflict.
That's a huge one. Own up to your mistakes.
Oh yeah.
It really lets your employees know that I'm a human too.
Yes.
And I just recently told one of my foremans, since he was having some issues, I told him, hey, I just want to let you know that when I make a mistake, or when I have a thought and you have a thought that's better, don't be afraid to tell me. I want to hear those things, and because they might be better than mine. And now all of a sudden they're like, really? I can talk to you about that? And they do. They open up, and we find better, more efficient ways and safe ways of doing things. But that open communication, you have to let them know. Yes, sometimes as the owner, people are afraid to talk to you and say, oh my, if I tell this guy this, what is he going to think about me?
That's such a great point. You have to let them know that you have an open door.
And when you make a mistake, you have to own up to it. Like, I've learned a long time ago, I feel like I'm more of a man if I say I'm sorry than not saying I'm sorry. And it's gone a long way for me in my career, where I go up and I say, hey, we broke that. I'm sorry we broke that. But I want to let you know, it wasn't the plumber. It wasn't the electrician. It was me. The framer did it. And usually you get I probably would have spent the next 4 hours trying to figure out who did this. And I appreciate you telling me that. So guess what? It's being repaired for free.
And that level of trust that you build by correcting mistakes is a stronger bond and level of trust with your customers, with your subcontractors, with your employees, with your business partners than you could ever build if there were never any mistakes. Those opportunities, mistakes, I should say mistakes, are such huge opportunities to be an example for your employees, and to show everybody that's in this culture. And this is how culture is determined in a company, by your actions.
Yeah. And I used to say all the time, if you're not making mistakes, you're not working. Like, you have to make mistakes in order to grow and become better. If you don't have any mistakes through your whole career, something's wrong.
Yeah, and
Something's wrong.
success is built on the backs of failures.
Yeah.
That's a well-known saying in all of entrepreneurship. You've been very gracious with your time. So just a few more
Thank you.
questions. I know, you talked about your business partner,
Yes.
and I ask this question to a lot of people, and I get very, very, very varied responses, many varied responses, and it's always based on their experience. And people always ask. I remember I was talking to a college entrepreneur class one time. This is a number of years ago, and they said, "How did you know that your business partner?" I was in the garbage industry at the time. I had the construction company, but more involved in the garbage industry at the time. How did you know that your business partner was the right business partner? Answer that question, and the broader question: should you have a business partner? Number two, if you're going to. And some people say, never have a business partner. I had terrible experiences. And I've had both. I've had the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so this question is particularly important. So for you, give us your experience on that.
James and I go back to about 1999. So we have a solid friendship already, and we always had. So it was a no-brainer. I did go to him when I recently had the vision. The first time I had the vision, I was like, I think I can do this, but I'm not sure. And he was the first person I reached out to when he moved back from North Carolina. He was running some Verizon stores up there, but he moved back. And when he moved back, he took on a role in his family where he stepped away from working. The wife continued working, and he became Mr. Mom. They are now divorced, so he's a single father of 6. And he takes care of these kids. Like, I'll tell you what, this is like Father of the Year award. Like, it's insane. These kids do not miss soccer practice any day.
What's the age range?
I want to say 7, 8, 12, a 17-year-old, and the 2 other daughters that they were foster kids, and they took them in, and they made them part of the family. Those 2 girls have already made it out into the real world.
Smokes.
So when you ask me if I found the right person, I think I found the right
Yeah,
person. Not only is he my best friend, but he's a single father of 6, and he's taking phenomenal care of him.
That's a pretty good example. And a lot of people say don't go into business with friends. And, some people have good experience, some people, but yours is built on a solid basis of solid foundation.
Yeah, the relationship wise, but we're 2 different people. He got the corporate side. I got the blue collar side with some corporate a little bit. So he doesn't understand what I'm doing, basically. He's learning. He's a quick learner. I mean, I hear him talking to the customer sometimes like, whoa, did you learn something today? He's been phenomenal. But then he takes care of all the stuff that I don't know about. So it's a yin and yang. He does what I don't know how to do. I do what he doesn't know how to do. We stay out of each other's ways, but we also know how to communicate to each other, without, we poke a little fun.
Yeah, you got to have a little fun. Yeah.
Hey, when we go back and look at the stuff that we did 6 months ago, we should write notes. So it's a little ongoing thing. Like, hey, did you write notes? And man, so it's playful fun, but business still. And it's nothing, iron fist or like, I can't believe you did that. It's like, hey, let's have a conversation. And, and
obviously there's going to be arguments. There's going to be,
it's a marriage.
We're married. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's a marriage without the benefits. And we all have up and down days where, sometimes you're in a good mood and the other guy's in a bad mood. So you just have to be flexible or give people their room when you need it.
Absolutely that.
So for you, if someone was thinking about going into a business partnership, what traits do you think they need to look for?
You basically need to think and act like an owner. I mean, you've made the step to be in control of your own demise, and you have to act like it. You have to show it. Sometimes we don't realize that we're like, we just elevated ourselves. Like I just recently started wearing, collar shirts. I got my Valley 48 polo under here, but I got this one with long sleeves and stuff. And someone saw me. I went to the hardware shop. I'm like, hey, you're looking good. You're dressing different. I'm like, yeah, I'm an owner of my own company now. So instead of wearing, my construction long sleeve green or orange construction high visibility shirt, I just want to make myself be more presentable. So you never know when you're going to show up somewhere and and you're going to be like, hey, I'm the owner of this
Yeah.
company. Now, don't get me wrong, in construction, there's all different types of owners. You got the blue collar guy that shows up with a t-shirt and shorts and flip-flops. You got a guy that shows up in a suit. I mean, everybody's different.
I've got my polo with the logo on it, and I've got my high vis shirt with the logo on it, because sometimes I'm the job site working. Safety got to have the high vis, and sometimes I'm got to go to a professional meeting. You get
So be ready to wear different hats.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah.
And if you know how to switch that hat when it needs to be switched, like I just opened my GC side. I just got my ROC. I'm
Congrats.
still slowly. Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's awesome.
Very slow process.
Yep.
So our not that we definitely want to go out and build for people, but basically I just know, I know so many contractors. When I would go out and frame stuff, I mean, I'm meeting drywallers, I'm meeting plumbers, I'm meeting electricians, I'm meeting painters, I'm meeting concrete, I'm meeting a whole, my phone is just full of people that I know. And, I give out bids to people, and sometimes I get back, hey, do you happen to know a concrete guy?
Have that.
Hey, I got my license. If you don't mind, I can build it for you through my KB1 license. Not that I'm a concrete guy, but I have the guys. And usually what's going to happen is that they know me. I communicate with them. They trust me. You have a concrete guy, George, we trust you.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Come on out.
It's relationship.
But and the reality of it is, I'm looking to buy some property next year and develop and build my own property with my own company.
Fantastic.
Create some cash flow, and then hopefully in the next 10 years, either the company gets taken over by the kids and we just get our cash flow money and we're ready to go into the sunset. So
you're planning and you're preparing.
Always planning.
And that's an important
don't
piece.
stop planning. Like a 10-year, we had a 1-year goal. We didn't quite get there. We have our 2-year goal. We've only been in business for 3 months of this calendar year. We already got 1.8 that we just blew out of the water, and it's only been the first 3 months. So if I continue to go another 1 point whatever, by the end of the year, I'm pretty close to our second year, which was 5 million.
That's fantastic.
But then you have a 5-year plan, and then you have a 10-year plan, and you get that positive thinking, and you're just kind of throwing it out into the world, and the pieces start falling into places. It gets to the point where I think about somebody, and then half an hour later I get a text from that person.
People,
it's that crazy.
Yeah, people that don't understand this concept of the positive thinking. Number one, you think and grow rich, and number two, you just haven't been in business, or you're not going to be successful if you don't embrace and understand the importance of that.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it, is what you think is what happens. Yeah. In general, and if you think positively, ultimately, it might happen in different ways than you expect, but it will happen.
It could.
If you think negatively, you can expect all of that to happen.
I know a lot of people that think very negative, and they're always stuck in the same place. They've been there forever. They get weathered down really fast. I meet a lot of people I've met in high school before, and I'm like, wow, like, holy moly, like, you aged really bad. But I think that it's because of that.
Yeah.
It's like you put yourself in a rut and you don't do anything to get yourself out of it. And if you think positive, things will change for it. But that's the thing. If you're a negative thinking person, you can make that change, but it's inside yourself.
Yes, it is.
Nobody else can pull that out of you.
That's a great point.
Nobody else.
Someone can tell you and say, but until you make that internal change, it'll never happen. Yep. Jorge, is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we go?
No, I think I got everything out that I needed to get out. So
thank you so much for your time. We've covered so many incredible entrepreneurial topics, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity, Andrew.
Thank you for listening to the Andrew Holland Podcast. Never miss an episode by subscribing to and liking our YouTube channel, The Andrew Holland Podcast, and by following and liking the show on your favorite audio platforms. Be sure to connect with us on X, formerly Twitter, A Holland Podcast. That's A Holland Podcast, so you can interact with Andrew, the team, and our guests throughout the week. Thank you again so much for listening. Have a great day, and we'll talk again soon.